Maranges. I'm one of the creators of Secret Hitler. With me are my friends Will Hindmarch and Luke Crane, both of whom have done more projects than I know of or how to name. They're taking panoramic, so go ahead and pose up. Don't worry about me.
Yeah, hold on. It's coming. It's coming. I have very shaky panoramic hands, and I apparently can't tell up from down. Steve Jobs is like, slow down, motherfucker.
You all are going to be a lot longer than you actually are in this picture. A lot zigzaggier.
Steve Jobs, stop yelling at me.
Here is our panel of Slendermen.
Yeah, that panel was like a fucking cardiogram. Not bad. Some of you are smeary, but that just shows your true forms, doesn't it?
Good. So, sorry, someone already burned the entire room's out loud joke. So, sorry, he used it up. That was the only out loud joke from the audience we'll have the whole time.
Wait, really?
I don't make the rules. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, they get one.
They get one?
They get one. A guy burned it on a loud evil laugh, and
oh, I see.
Now it's just us the whole time.
Wait.
Sorry.
But one of them gets to yell Freebird, and one of them gets to yell Slayer, right? That's all right.
There it is. We're out.
We're done. All right. Can I go?
Yeah.
Can I go?
Wait, Luke, what do you do? Same team here.
Sorry.
We're both trying to minimize the, right? Unless you want.
No, I like chaos is a ladder, Tommy.
Sure.
Also, you didn't do it right, so you're fired. It's Slaya, by the way, with much more throat.
So welcome to our panel, Luke's Opinions. Thank you all for being here. I made these guys do this panel with me. I have a philosophy background. I like thinking about this sort of stuff. I know they're very thoughtful. Thank God some other people were like, oh, all right, this looks interesting, because I never know. When I'm like, oh, what are games for? People can be like, I don't know, having fun and forgetting the world sucks, you idiot, shut up. And they are a little bit for that. But I think it's really interesting to think about the other things that we can and can't do with games and what we should and shouldn't do with games. I've also been on a lot of panels where someone will say the word, like, fun on the panel, and then one of these two will go,
I will kill you.
Yeah, like, right, because fun is a hard notion to define, and for some reason that makes it kind of a bad word, but like...
I mean, you can really, so if you want to talk about the F word, like we can really actually demonstrate it just with that interaction. Like, fun for me in this particular instance would be stabbing Tommy through his rib cage, and that might not be...
play. It's like a fun relationship we have.
It might not be fun for Tommy.
Right.
Right, probably not.
Right, but that doesn't mean we don't have a notion of what fun is, right?
Sure, but your fun is different than my fun.
That's okay.
And so there's no universal definition of fun, and therefore, fuck your fun.
Well, my breakfast was different from your breakfast. Does that mean there's no universal definition of breakfast?
Oh, God, philosophy, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, you knew what you were getting yourself into. So I want to start with, like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen someone, or that you yourself have tried to do with a game that games probably didn't need to do? I think a lot about, like, edutainment software, because my youngest sister is, like, 10 years younger than me. And so I was conscious for all of the, like, games that she played, which were really just meant to get her to, like...
Don't answer the question you asked.
Rehearse things.
Just let...
I'm buying you time. What do you got?
I don't need your time. Go ahead.
What's the worst thing?
I've been talking a lot, Will. Why don't you jump in here?
The worst thing that I've ever done that didn't work?
No.
Or that you've seen done. Yeah, what's the worst thing you've ever seen or yourself tried to do with a game?
I had in a Star Wars role-playing game campaign, I introduced, first of all, a card game system for lightsaber dueling, in which my players told me, I don't want my character's skill with a lightsaber to be dependent on my skill at this game, which was completely legit. And then we did a bit where we did Roses and Thorns, basically, which is the thing where you go around the table and you say, I loved this thing, I didn't like this thing. And that was a disaster, because the players didn't want to tell each other what they didn't like. And that was in pursuit of art, not fun, I suppose. That was in pursuit of, like, I will make this game meaningful by doing Roses and Thorns, and then we will learn from it. And it was like, yeah, that's not, telling my friend that they make a bad elf wasn't fun for me. And of course, that was the second player who decided that they weren't going to do it, and then they all joined the revolution, and that was that.
Oh man, so there was one player who did Roses and Thorns?
Yes,
and was
yes,
like,
who did the
Here are
Thorns.
the things I didn't like,
Here's
and then
what I
the
didn't
second guy
like.
was like, nope, we just all know what you hate now.
Right, and
Yeah.
so then they were the Tarkin of my emperor or whatever, and then it was all downhill from there. Yeah.
Luke?
Mine's a little more zoomed out.
Okay.
The worst thing that I've ever seen a game do is try to teach someone something. I think that is probably the highest crime a game can do. So, yeah.
What was it trying to teach?
Yeah, anything specific?
Anything, any game that is trying to teach you something.
No, but
is-
I'm saying, what was the first one? When did you learn this lesson that you said that this doesn't work? When did you discover that you were comfortable being wrong, is I guess what I'm asking.
Oh, God, when I played one of your games.
But we both know you haven't done that.
I know, it's true. Well, because you haven't finished them.
That's fair.
Come on, those are some sick birds. Come on. Come on, a little love here. Ah, try. Well, now you're like going back into
Or the most recent one, but I
memories
just-
that
yeah,
I
we
don't
just wanna-
have. Most recent game that tried to teach. I run away from them. I run.
Have you ever been
screaming from
surprised
them.
by something that you're playing a game and you find out that it's moralizing to you after you started playing it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, often these games start by they often telegraph like they're going to teach you about water conservation or about community or organization or politics or whatever. They tell you they're going to teach you about this, and then you're like, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah, you should conserve water. Great. Like, who wouldn't, you monster? Like, I don't need to go through your horrible exercise. He's got Chicagoans, their lake. It's going to last forever, by the way, until the sun boils it off.
It'll last longer than me.
Yeah, I'm not going to be there
That's
for
the
that.
same. So, like, I think what's sort of emerging here is in both of those cases, you were trying to make the game, or the game was trying to be something else first, and then secondarily a game, right? Like, I think this is a thing a lot of game designers fall into, especially, I mean, I think about this a lot because my first game did, like, well, and there's this weird sort of sophomore slump
Oh,
pressure.
yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah, right. Where it's like, oh no, people sure do like that Hitler game, which feels like a real Jumanji situation I've created. So let me apologize for that. Also, really sorry about Secret Hitler becoming real. I guess not. The timing was like too close. It should have been 6 months earlier, maybe. And right, so like I'm feeling this weird pressure where it's like, okay, my second game has to also, one, be something that probably can't come true, but to like say something or something, and that's a really good way to ruin a game. Like games are not for doing something other than being a game first, right? Conservation games, same thing. I mean, anyone like grow up very close to a bunch of museums? Right, and so, yeah, you all know, like, if you went to museums as a kid, they're always like, here's a fun game about water conservation is a perfect example. Here's a fun game about saving water, and you're like, I'll bet I pick all the low water options, don't I? And they're like, you're 7! And you're like, yeah, but even, I still hate this. 7-year-olds can hate things, too.
Yes, oh yes.
And adults didn't expect you to do that. So, Will, you think games can teach you things? Are there good ways to do that?
I absolutely think that they can, and I think, but I mean, I agree with the notion here that it should be a game first, because otherwise nobody's going to play it long enough to find out what you're, I don't want to say saying, as much as to me, the games are interrogative. So a game wants to ask questions about stuff, and it can have an answer, but it doesn't necessarily need an answer, right? To me, that's part of the thing, is that a game is a more of a question than a statement, as opposed to like fixed media, which is more of a statement than a question. Or it will always answer its own question.
Really? What answer does the Three Musketeers give you? Or the end of the D'Artagnan cycle? D'Artagnan dies at the end, by the way, spoilers.
Yeah. Well, but it's on the notion of its themes of tyranny and such, right? It has things to say about who's the good guys and who are the bad guys, whereas a game might start off with who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, even though the Musketeers are kind of not great good guys.
They're horrible people.
Yeah. There's a lot of murder.
A lot of questions. A lot of murder, a lot of questionable
Right, but
behavior.
they also answer a lot of the questions that they pose, right? And that's the thing to me. And a game can, but it does it through play, so that you don't necessarily know what the outcome is, the answer is going to be. Like, well, all right, so something like Inheritance, which I haven't played yet, right? But so I've heard by rep, which is a game of yours.
Yep.
What is it about?
Power.
Cool, right? So there's a theme. What does it say about power?
That power structures are an individual choice.
Okay, cool. How does it say it?
By design, but it says it through characters, right? None of the characters ever say the word power. None of the characters ever the closest they get to it is they might say, like, we must adhere to a tradition. And those characters are assholes. But yet, people still adhere to their traditions.
Do those characters stay assholes through each instance of play? Have you had people subvert it, turn it around, or turn individual characters around, that kind of...
Very rarely. I'm looking at all of you. Very, very rarely. You all fall in line, and once you get power, you're very reluctant to give it up. Very, very reluctant. Even when in the face of having to murder your own children, you would rather cling to power and tradition. It's fascinating to watch. I've seen hundreds of you do this. It's really remarkable.
So when you see...
Murdering your own spouse to cling to power. It's amazing.
You're a monster. I mean, you're good at it. But
my tentacles showing.
no. Stop touching my leg. There's a question that I have, which is that if you're not surprised by the answer that the game gives out, right? Are you, or I should say, on a binary state, does it surprise you? But you're not surprised, you get the same answer over and over again. Why do you keep playing it?
Oh, it's the iterations and evocations are different. Like, yeah, I certainly believe that actually is something I do believe fundamentally about games, is that the game must surprise you and must give you information or a result that you did not expect or that you would not otherwise have encountered in another form or medium or in your daily life, right? Like just playing Dungeons and Dragons, like the ye old 20-sided die. That engine of cruelty there, right? That the ones that come up in that engine, you don't want those ones to come up, but those are stories, right? And those are shocking lightning bolts, like blasting you in the head of like, I failed my saving throw, right? Like, and then it just right. That is the game rising up and talking to you in a way, and perhaps spitting in your face, but like providing that shocking and unexpected result that you would never have said, like we're walking down the street and I'm telling you a story, and then like, oh yeah, and then I died.
So I think like a really important aspect of what like is sort of emerging about inheritance is like risk is really important. Like risk of things going badly, despite yourself or despite your best efforts, is super important if a game wants to say anything, like because it's participatory. Like one reason water conservation games suck is because, the message is painted right on there, and the whole time you're like, oh, make the decision that conserves water to win, right? Like you never feel like you're on a knife's edge where you're like, things could go bad even though, right? It's not hard for us to imagine a very good water conservation game, like a Euro game that is like really interesting about like, these are the gallons that we have for all the people ever. And you really got to nail it, right? But like those designed museum games are like, now remember, don't use water.
So my friend Mary Flanagan is a professor at Dartmouth, and she's a game designer, and she's actually way smarter than any of us, and has done academic research around message games, around impact games and message games. And I saw her speak at Games for Change, which is actually basically an entire weekend of this panel, attenuated over many, many talks, some of which were very interesting, actually, but Mary's is one of them. Anyway, I'm going to butcher her study, but basically, Mary has really strong indicators that message games, games that are trying to teach you to recycle, for example, that was one of the test games she did, that the more naked the message is, it's not that the game is bad and you're bored. Sure, that too, right? But it, in fact, gives you negative feelings about recycling, and if the game is bad and is bald and like, you should recycle because it's smart and good and blah, 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 you're actually less likely to recycle. Right? What a weird, horrible set of creatures we are as human beings. Right? So
you're less likely to recycle in the game or after
the game in your life.
Right. Well, I like a challenge. If recycling was the easy, obvious path, then I'm like, all right, Let's see what happens if
But so then like the test
Don't
that they
recycle.
The test that they did is right. They give people like they don't tell people this. They give them some other test or they play a game or whatever. And then but you also get a plastic cup that you're drinking out of during the game. And then on the way out, they there's a trash and recycling bin. And then they count all the cups that go in the recycling bin and the trash based on the variety of the game, the test game, whatever. And right, so you monster, you play that bad game and you're just like meh, and you just throw your cup in the trash.
Out of spite.
Out of spite at the end, or out of this weird,
or you don't
human.
feel tickled. You're not like, I'm continuing this difficult.
Or I'm still playing a character who doesn't recycle. I'm still in character when I leave.
It's not an RPG.
Everything's an RPG.
In Secret Hitler, a thing that we hear a lot of from feedback from people who don't know what they're talking about is that it is bad that the fascists can win that game. That we should not make a game where fascists can win. But, that did happen once. Twice. So, that is a real-world risk. And I think that a game, if players never feel the risk that, if I don't pay attention, fascism will win, the game doesn't say anything.
Well, and that to me is the nature and part of a badly written question, right? Is that if the question has one answer, then now you're in an exam, and that's not a game.
Right.
Right? It has one answer that is correct. For a game to have real risk in a way that fiction may not even have real risk, right? In the sense that you're waiting to find out if the risk is real, not to find out if. So it's up to the author. The author is less in suspense than the reader is, right? But for the players and the designer both, if the risk is real, then we share in that risk to an extent. I don't know if the fascists are going to win this game that you designed every time. And so it's a real question, as opposed to a posed question that has one correct answer. And to me, that's part of the nature of a badly written message game, is that it's clear what answer you want me to give you, right? Will you conserve water? That's a bad way of asking that. Because then you say, well, of course, yes. I'm going to say yes, because I don't want to be a monster. Or I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to conserve water because you're not the boss of me, or whatever it is. But it's not a fun question to answer. To rephrase that would be something like, or as you say for resource management, how are you going to conserve this water? Right. Or at what cost are you going to conserve this water? Or how do you want us to go out?
Or are you capable of conserving this water in difficult circumstances?
Wait. Let's talk real world example here.
Yeah.
Dear Tommy, do you think that your game, Secret Hitler,
yes,
has changed anyone's voting habits? Before you answer, I want everyone now to think, we just went through a local election in New York City. And before Tommy answers, I want you to think, if you were in a voting booth since you played Secret Hitler, as I was, did you think about Secret Hitler when you were in the voting booth? So don't tell Tommy, but now let's ask. Tommy, do you think it changed anyone's voting habits?
I reserve the right to challenge the question. However,
I did not grant such a right.
No, I don't think it, on the margins maybe, but no, I don't think it changed anyone's voting habits. Did it get anyone to vote who wasn't going to? Maybe.
Isn't that a voting habit?
Well, then yes.
Maybe. Okay, all right.
Did it make anyone decide to become more active or to phone bank for someone? Maybe.
All right, straw poll. Anyone out there think that Secret Hitler changed their voting habits, whether it got you out into a form of activism or made you not elect a fascist in the voting booth? Anyone? 0 people.
All right, well, the Kickstarter was running in late 2015, so there wasn't a lot of time, Luke.
I just said I went through a local election just recently, and I can tell you most assuredly it did not affect my voting habits. But Secret Hitler is such a game, though, that the way you're framing this, it actually could make the fascists more active and realize that they really got to get out there and really disrupt liberal activities.
The risk is real.
Right. I mean, so this is another thing that I think about, right? Because it's you shouldn't be able to say things that are bad.
What?
You shouldn't be able to say things. But a criticism that we get is about Secret Hitler is, so again, the risk of fascists winning, this might actually activate fascists. And I don't know, I think a lot about that line, right? Because on the one hand, it's Confederate flags, bad for sure. Language, good, even though language is also a thing that fascists can use and disrupt and organize with. And it's hard to know where on that huge range. Everyone knows there are, on the spectrum of communication, the ends are language and Confederate flags. Those are the poles. In the middle there, it's hard to know where to end up.
I'm so lost.
Hell yeah. I guess what I'm getting at here is I actually don't know if Secret Hitler changed voting habits. If I were trying to make a game that did, I think I probably would have made a different game. I don't know that I could make that game. Or if that is a thing you can actively do, right? Like, if I went in with the intention of making a game that changed voting habits, it would look a lot different, and it might be more like the game you're talking about. Right? In Secret Hitler, everyone has to vote, among other things.
Has anyone here made a reference to Secret Hitler while talking politics with gamers and or non-gamers? So it has affected the way we talk about it, which is still in effect.
All right, has anyone in the room won as Hitler? I have. All right. Anyone?
It already got used. I'm real sorry, dude. Someone already used that.
Anyone feel good about that? Any of that? My small segment. Anyone feel good? Feel good about winning?
I
beat Tommy as Hitler, and man, it was one of the best days of my life. So I'm a monster. So that's what games are for.
Well, that's the thing, right? Part of it is that if games are about being able to be monsters to your friends and still be friends with them, right? The magic circle, what you do in game is different from what you would do out of game.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So part of that question is the notion of if Secret Hitler were affecting voting habits outside of its magic ring, where you play it, is that what makes it a message game, or is that what makes it less of a game because then it's not a game first? Like the notion is that the person who leaves the circle should be subtly altered by what happened when in the circle, or up to subtly altered.
I'm not making that point.
No, I'm not saying. Right, I'm making that point.
Yeah, no, I don't know. So everyone know the concept of the magic circle? Right. So, for those of you who don't, the idea is that when we play a game, we are consciously and unconsciously agreeing to a set of rules, both written and unwritten rules, and that we agree to abide by those rules for the terms of the game, and that those rules are probably different than the other social constructs in which we agree. And in fact, we will behave differently now. And perhaps in a very irrational manner, and then once the game is over, the normal rules of our interactions will resume, and we will behave differently. We'll behave in our kind of normal way toward one another. It's a really excellent concept. Huygens?
Huizinga, but I'm saying that wrong, but that's how you spell it.
Huizinga,
Huizinga.
What's it? Huizinga.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyway, so which actually I find that concept very powerful, and which is why I'm kind of needling you on Schittler, because
that's the internal name for it. Yeah, that's right.
Because games are for play. Games are for playing. Period. I think that once you begin to, as a designer with intent, try to bleed them outside of the magic circle to affect people's behavior or change them, that you're creating something else. You're creating propaganda, or Facebook, or a more fun panel.
Yeah, listen, if this was supposed to be fun, I would have made it a game, but it's a panel. So... They're doing it wrong. That's not what panels are for. This is ponderous. Oh, Jesus.
All right, wait, come on. Yeah. Can we get it like a really
like a counter?
Cheer? Like just like to make them feel bad, right?
Like I really sing. Yeah! Thank you, everyone.
We'll pretend to do that at the end again, like we had fun.
What else can you get him to do?
Three of us left. Yeah. What else can I get? Oh wow! Have you ever done the dollar auction?
Oh no.
Oh, I will have some money at the end of that. Anyway, but moving on.
Yeah. So
if games are for play, which is what you said.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I guess the notion is, what my question then is if or let me phrase it in the form of a question. Luke, do you think that a player should emerge from play the same as they went into it? Not necessarily that should is a dangerous word, right? But would you prefer that a player emerge from play affected to any degree by play, or that they have the ability to just shrug it off like a cloak and walk away? Do you prefer one over the other?
This is a trap question, you fucker.
Yeah, it is.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, Luke, you built the cage. We'll just install the lock. Like that's... Okay, let's kick the can. Let's kick the can back like just one layer. Games are for play. Oh, all right, why do we play? What's play for then? Like, why do we bother with that stupid thing all the time when we could be making widgets?
Oh man.
We could be making widgets and consuming our calorie sludge and then sleeping. Why do we why play?
It's too much of a commitment to pretend to be a wizard in real life.
It takes a lot of work. It does. I did it for 30 days once. I do not recommend it.
That's a weird like Lenten thing to give up.
Does it?
Is not acting like not a wizard.
Does anyone have a dog or a cat in here? Right? Anyone play with the dog or cat? Like, right? Yeah. Like, and it's a play with with your beast is really important. It's actually it's important to their health, both mental and physical. It is, there's a little bit of learning behavior going on there. But I also submit to you that play is important for them for pleasure, right? Like that these beasts, right, enjoy play. They also know the difference, right? You all know this, that some of your cats, of course, are dicks and they're like using to their claws too much. But like they know the difference, like when they bite or use claws or dog, for dogs or cats, whatever. They know the difference between that this is play versus like I'm going to murder you, which they're more than capable of, especially cats. Right, so like that actually, so I got my first cat recently, and this is really...
We can tell.
But it's been enlightening in terms of a game designer, like seeing what play means to this creature and how important play is. My cat demands to play every day, right? My cat doesn't demand food. My cat doesn't demand cuddles or laps or anything. My cat demands to play every day. And it's not about teaching hunting behavior, and she's a terrible hunter. She's a goofball. But she wants to run around the house and pounce on things and bite me and all that other stuff. And right, but there's this, and I submit that humans have a similar impulse, that there is a deep-seated need for this type of interaction, where the stakes are lower. They're not life or death stakes, but we're kind of making the motions and enjoying ourselves, and there's pleasure in the act. But that's different than games.
Right. We invent games. We didn't invent play.
Yes.
Games are a thing we make to get at play.
Oh God, I don't know. That made me hurt in my stomach.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
But no, but it's part of it is because otherwise, because you can get bored of a kind of play. You may not, but everybody has things that they get a kind of, like I'm a kid, I flip a coin for 20 times, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And eventually I get bored. That's not fun anymore because it's a bad game. But something that you enjoy doing, you might have more play available in it than your life is long. So like you're like, I could knit forever, right? Great, awesome. And that's even crafty, but you know what I mean? Like, I could play D&D forever.
Pleasure and craft, oh
right?
man, fuck you.
So I think about this a lot.
I did, I opened up a whole thing.
My favorite theater in Chicago, the House Theater, which I know Will, you're also familiar with, they do all their plays in the round, because the House Theater is on the front, was the first to really realize, oh, you know what? We can't out-movie movies, and so we shouldn't make our productions necessarily. We shouldn't focus on making them increasingly big or loud or flashy, right? We can't outdo the thing itself. And plays are sort of for something different. And they view the purpose of a play as an opportunity for us to experience much more communally this ramping up of emotions, right? Since Aristotle in the Poetics, he was like, the point is we all go watch that guy try really hard not to fuck his mother, and then he does, and he feels bad, and the gods are pissed, and it's Oedipus Rex, you fucking Philistines. Actually, I think they also had that play and loved it. So the point is that it was this was a communal activity to watch a tragedy and feel really bad and see other people from your community also weeping and be like, yeah, me too, and to form that connection and to build these community bonds. And I think, like, play has a similar thing where, like, play is a chance to, like, experience these things that we will not ordinarily experience.
Or just even at a different cost.
Yeah, and to do those, like, together. But I also worry about games trying to outdo other things.
Well,
like-
because you're heading down a dark and wrong path, right? Because you, like, if you take a step back and think about this terribly specious argument that we're building up here in this particular regard, is that play and pleasure and starting to build this, like, this case on this. No, we get pleasure from lots of things. We get pleasure from good things and bad things. We get pleasure from making things. We get pleasure from our families. We get pleasure from eating. You know, we learn things. We go through acts. Like, we do. You know, we get pleasure from reading. We get pleasure from watching movies, seeing plays. Right? Like, there's all these ways that we also learn about the world, experience the world, and experience pleasure, right? Play is one of them. It is part of a paradigm, right? What personally makes games so fascinating to me is that even though that they are an intrinsic pillar of human culture, the exploration of games and what games are and what games are for is actually a really new discipline. It's less than a century old. And we don't know. Like, right, games are actually their own cultural pillar, and how and why we interact with them and what we do inside of them is actually complicated and kind of like a black box at the moment. We have played games since even before the first movie critic ever, Aristotle.
Theater critic.
All right, I got a couple giggles. Yeah. The film critic, is that what you said?
A theater critic.
Theater critic, yeah, all right, fair enough. Wasn't there a camera obscura or something?
I don't know, man. We lost all of Aristotle in the fucking Library of Alexandria, and we've reassembled it from fragments. That's the crazy thing. You know what?
We'll back it up.
Yeah, Luke's got me on Aristotle now.
Sorry, I made an Aristotle joke. I'm
Yeah,
way out
you
of my
thought
depth.
you could go for
I am
a while.
Way out of my
But,
depth.
so
What's
if you don't like the
crazy-
question what games are for, if you
I don't know why I'm here.
No, but my question is then, do you want the black box to remain a black box, or if we're in this new frontier of being able to explore and find out about all the complexity that's in there, do you like that it's complex, or are you, I don't want to say afraid, but are you unhappy with the idea that we would find out and make a rigorous version of game design or game understanding like we have like we think we have for theater?
No, not at all. Right, we don't know what the fuck goes on in theater either, but
So then why don't you like the question?
No.
And I'm not trying to be like assaulting. I'm like curious, like, because I see this passion obviously in the design and on the topic.
Oh, no, I want to know what's inside the black box. But it's going to be like Cthulhu or something. Like, it's going to be like.
It's going to be a letdown, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, so no. Of course I want to explore this and understand this. It's a fascinating thing. I'm never going to come up with the answer. And I guess I just want to say that. I guess what I'm saying here is on stage is don't assume that any of us are experts or know we're all wrong and we're kind of fumbling around in the dark here. But which actually reminds me of this other side. Like, there's a competitive side to a lot of games. Some RPGs, but very few of them. But most other games are competitive in some way. There's a winner. Some people think that is a definition of a game, is that there's a win state and a winner. That is not true, but that is, historically been a definition. Soon, and I mean it started a few years ago, but soon. Like, winning a game is going to be meaningless in that, like, robots will be able to beat us at all of our games all the time, like, hands down, right? The most complicated games that we make, they're about to solve poker, right? I
think they did that already.
Have they solved poker?
A machine just beat all our best people.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
So right. And poker is one of the most complex games that we have ever designed as a species and a culture. Right. The chess, Go, poker. So right. So the idea of being the best at this and like competing, and like that kind of height of achievement, that. Well, I'm not saying that the competition will go away, but I'm saying that this idea, this kind of like this ideal of games of like being the best at something. Now, like, right, you can no longer be the best at poker. You can no longer be the best at Go. You can no longer be the best at chess.
But it's not just that competition won't go away. I mean, chess is a really good example because it was like the 90s when computers like started beating people, and it was the late 90s when computers were like done beating people, right? When they were like, all right, well, the smallest computer we can make is better than the best person we have. And not only has chess competition not disappeared, it's kind of going through like a renaissance in terms of its popularity, and we still have the rankings, and Magnus Carlsen is still is not only, the best, but probably maybe the best we've ever had.
Second best. Big Blue be the best.
Well, I mean,
So there are two robots at the top, you're saying?
Yeah.
Because we can infer that if Magnus is that good, that he's also a robot.
yeah, right. That's fucking God. Magnus Carlsen is like 7 or 8 months younger than me too. So it's like, fuck.
So clearly his successes are about you?
Yeah, right. That motherfucker. And he's like handsome. It's not okay. So what I'm saying is, yeah, computers being better than us did not get rid of competitive chess or even change it that much.
When you take
It
that
changed how
pinnacle off the
players-
top,
right?
all the experiential content is what remains.
Right.
And when Magnus Carlsen hoists a cup and a journalist is like, "What do you think?" He's like, he's not like, "Well, Ribica's still better than me," right? People are still working very hard to compete with each other. So that like community aspect of like, oh, we're not measuring ourselves against computers. That's a fool's errand now. But we continue to compete and want to be the best.
Yeah, so I just want to amplify Will's point, right? That suddenly it changes the experience of play, and we begin to play for different reasons, right? And it doesn't necessarily remove competition from the equation, but it actually emphasizes the experiential nature of the game.
What were the old reasons and what are the new reasons? I don't see how the reasons change.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the 90s, were all the chess players like, nah, I'm not going to play that computer. Like, why would I try myself against a computer? No, they went up again. They were like, I'm going to beat this machine. It's some John Henry shit. Bah. And they went up. And at first they're like, there's some close games. And then they started to lose. And then they got their pants beat. Their pants are on fire. And I don't know if you noticed, but, chess wasn't really as popular as it once was, maybe even 50 years ago. But chess, you said yourself, chess now is going through a renaissance as, you have this charismatic figure, this handsome guy who's playing games, beating other Russians and whatnot. Like, he's not Russian, but...
Norwegian.
Our relationship with the experience of the game changes.
But the 90s was the exception, not the rule. Our relationship to chess now looks much closer to our relationship to chess in the 50s. There was this very brief window where computers were almost exactly as good as Garry Kasparov. And in that brief window, humans were like, I am going to beat that computer. Mm-hmm. And then he did. And then they were like, hey, we went back and tweaked the algorithm, and the computer beat him. And even at the time, people were like, this was not Kasparov at his best. Like, when we talked about it, and then the best computers came along, and we all went, all right, let's go back to the 50s, where we're trying out new things, we're trying to figure things out. Our relationship to chess was not like one way, computers, it was another way. It was one way for a long time. Cold War, it became like a proxy war. We had Bobby Fischer ruin a lot of Russians' days. And then Bobby Fischer was so good. He lost 2 matches to Spassky and beat Spassky in 7. And his rating went down because that's how much better than Spassky he was supposed to be. Like, the formula was like, oh, he should not have gone 7-2. He should have gone 9-0, so he's like worse than we thought. Like, that's how crazy good Bobby Fischer was. And that was fun, and then computers, and for 5 years we're like, oh fuck, we gotta beat the machines, and then we didn't, and now we're back to normal. Like, I think chess has more or less always been the same. There was just like this computer like mania.
I think we've gone down a dark path. I think that we all acknowledge that AI are going to win, so let's move on.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm getting at there, what that says sort of more broadly, it was like, it was not hard for games to go back to what they were for before, right? Like back to play, back to communal aspects. I think the really useful things that we're focusing on here, as is often the case, are actually the negatives, right? The like, well, here are some things that games are not for or should not be explicitly used for. Like, I think the black box, there's probably everything in it in some ways. Games are as big as language in some ways, and so like, what is language for? It's like, I don't know, whatever.
I mean, I certainly think games are expressive. There are expressive
Right.
games that their purpose is to be, not necessarily going to say a specific thing, to be message games per se, but to be messaging, in that you can say things during play that you can't say otherwise. Like D&D, I can describe killing an orc in a way that I wouldn't do, say, at Thanksgiving, because that wouldn't land well. But that's a cartoon example, right? But there are things where even just games where you can talk, like diplomacy, you can talk to your friends in ways you would never talk to your friends otherwise, which is why I do not play diplomacy.
See, yeah, I hate diplomacy because I don't think it respects the magic circle. Diplomacy doesn't give you reasons internal to itself for the moves you make.
But it's still also a communicative game in that
Right.
that it's a plain language game in so many ways.
Right.
But it changes certain meanings or dynamics in terms of what you mean when you befriend your friends or betray your friends, right? To me, also, there are games like a lot of RPGs do this where there are two things that are mechanically identical but are cosmetically distinct, and which one I pick says something about my character, and that's an expression that I'm using to say something to describe to other players, even though it is not a better or worse choice. And that's where they're like rendering engines or game engines, which is to me an interesting question about that experiential aspect, right? How big can a game get before it's bad at being a game? Like, how many games can a game encompass? I was fascinated that World of Warcraft could be as big as it was and have as many subsystems as it did. And as it does, as it continued to expand. But I think there's a point at which when a game gets so large that it's not fun anymore, or that you feel like you're not playing the game, you're playing a part of the game. Like, when does a system fracture? And that's a statement to me is about how we engage with it as an individual system or as a bunch of different systems. And so that question to me is one of, if a game is for something that I don't care about, but also includes stuff that I do care about, when am I playing the same game as another player that says they're playing the same game? Well, especially in RPGs, right? That we're both playing different versions of D&D, or both playing different versions of Burning Wheel, and we're like, well, our games are very, very different, but we agree that we're playing the same thing.
Holy, sure. How many people play with free parking in Monopoly? Like, what does free parking do in your game?
There you go, right?
Right? Yeah, what does free parking do? Shout some out. Collect the money, put it in the bank, nothing. Infinite game. Yeah, inflation is what it does. It creates bad rules, design, and inflation.
But it feels so good to land on. Oh, yeah. And you're like, oh, fuck you. I was almost bankrupt and now I'm not.
Yeah, and what you don't realize is that bankruptcy is a mercy in Monopoly. You don't have to play anymore.
I say bankruptcy makes your game end.
Bold stance, Monopoly is bad. How many people play with auction rules when they play Monopoly?
What's
yeah,
it?
The real rules.
What's it?
Auction rules.
Oh, yeah.
Right, where that cuts the game time in half.
Right.
But also gives you kind of emotionally bad feelings because you lose an auction.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the thing that makes Monopoly a better global game and makes it move much faster also, like, feels the worst internally, and most people don't play with it.
Right. Monopoly was actually a message game when it was first designed. Yep. Its creator designed it to talk about, real estate problems in, like, New York or Chicago or something, right? Was it?
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City.
But I don't know if Atlantic City was a placeholder for other places. But yeah, it's set in Atlantic City. Yeah.
It was meant to point out problems in society, right? And now, hilarious. So what are games for? Haha, we used this game that was a message game back then to celebrate all the rotten things about buying property and owning property. And I drove you out of your house and home. I got all your stuff. You're poor. You got nothing. I'm the king of the world.
So, like, again, like,
voice?
risk, right? There has to be that risk
my real voice.
of things going wrong, right? The risk of things going badly is what makes, or what was supposed to make that thing interesting. And at the time, you needed this, like, also this contextual frame to say, and as a result, like, oh, look, see, this is dangerous and not this is cool. You can imagine in 5,000 years, some archaeologists dig up only Secret Hitler, and they don't know anything about fascism and liberals. And so they're like, well, this game seems to say that a brave group of snakes, maybe they themselves are the lizard people that will replace us.
Reptoids.
So the reptoids
Anyone else a reptoid?
uncover this artifact 5,000 years from now, and they're like, look, some brave lizards who are coordinating against some. I mean, this is like the resistance. It's just spies and the resistance. You're like, I don't know what the fuck this resistance stands for.
Is that only 5,000 years in the future?
That could be
Can you put me in suspended animation?
Game. The only reason that game can say anything is because of a broader context in which, like, the general message seems to be fascism is bad. Lizards are a good stand-in for bad people. We got a really angry email from a herpetologist the other day. who was like, cold-blooded doesn't even mean that. It just means their metabolism is different. How dare you make lizards seem like Hitler? And I was like, lizards were not the important one to get right here. It's more important that we say Hitler is bad than lizards are normal, like, right.
Let me give you a really specific and I think terrific example of what you're talking about. There was a thing on, the biggest Syrian lions at the British Museum. They have the ones that they've stolen from Syria years and years and years ago. They stand up in the British Museum, and there's a doctor at the British Museum named Irving Finkel who noticed a mark on the base of the statue that is also the board for the Royal Game of Ur. From the tombs that I'm going to get wrong how old Ur is, but from an ancient tomb. And it's a game, it's one of these things that we pulled out of somebody's tomb.
Game.
The Ur game, right. It's the game that we pulled out, like a race game it's got a weird, it's like narrow in the middle, but we think it's like backgammon because we know backgammon was old, but we don't know Irving Finkel kind of made rules for Ur, but we don't know what we're talking about because we have the boards and the pieces, but not the rules. Yeah. And so etched on the foot of this Assyrian lion is a mark with a game like an Ur board that you could just set pieces on to play a game. And so the answer is, what is that game for? And their thought was, well, let's see, these two big lions sat at the gates of the city and somebody had to sit there all night. So games are for making it till dawn, right? Games are for getting to the end of your shift.
Sure, yeah. They're getting to the end of this panel.
How are we doing?
15 minutes.
Great, okay, this is a piece of advice Will gave me the other night about a different ponderous panel I was doing. No, it was like, let's skim the land a bit here.
Touch actual practice.
Yeah, right, so like, the really good thing I liked earlier was like, here are bad questions for the games to interrogate, here are good questions for the games. Like, it is bad if the question is, should you conserve water? And it is good if the question is, how are you going to conserve this water? What else? What are like what are the
some good things the games are for?
What are good things for a game to try to do, and what are the bad things? So is it good or bad for a game to try to get you to see the importance of voting?
It doesn't matter. No. Come on. Whether you're making a game or playing a game, try to always play with a critical eye, right? Enjoy the game, immerse yourself in the game, trash talk your friends, right? But also awaken the critical eye, your third critical eye. That's what that is on the dollar bill. And look at the game, like, what is the game saying? What is it for? What is it incentivizing? What behavior is this game pushing me to do? What do I think the designers are trying to say?
What did it turn me into as I was doing this?
Sure, yeah. Like, did that decision feel good? Did that make me feel bad? Do that, like, play these games consciously, like, invest yourself in them. And also, like, then there's another track to that too. It's because I love like, when my players scream at me like, you're just trying to make me do this, like, you're just trying to make me kill him, and I'm like, sure, or not. Like, and I know as a designer, I don't care whether he does or doesn't. I care that he makes a decision. I'm actually really thrilled that he's in a state of high dudgeon right now, and going like, fuck, I gotta make a fucking decision, and I'm mad. So how dare you, right? Cool, that's great. But also look then also not just at like, what do you think the game is saying, but is it achieving that?
Yep.
Right? It is because a lot of games may seem like they're like, you might be like, oh, fucking clearly message, but actually, you know what? It's actually just kind of a fun game, and we're just kind of rolling dice and having a good time, and the message doesn't really come through, but yeah, it was fun.
Are there design decisions that you've made specifically when you were like, oh, I don't want the game to do that, or that's very close to what I want out of this game, but let me make this tweak?
Yes.
Can you think of one?
Say yes.
So, all right, I told this story last night. I'm sorry, but I'll tell the story of the LARP I made before Inheritance, which was called Poisonous Ambition. I'm sorry if you heard the story before, but it was an orc LARP, right? And I had actually run this as a burning wheel scenario. It got out of hand. People were jumping on the tables and running around. I was like, you know what? We could probably turn this into a LARP. It'll be cool. Because yeah, orcs jumping on tables and yelling at each other. Like, that's like, I want that in a LARP, right? Sounds good. So it's like, it's a LARP for like 20 people, and you play the whole clan. You play from goblins all the way to the Namid, right, the orc chief. And the power that you have in the game is everybody has like a special trait card or whatever, but because I'm obsessed with material design, right? So that everybody had a trait card, but also everybody had cards that represented the clan. They had basically one card for each strata of the clan. So you had a goblin card, a warrior card, like a sorcerer card, a chief card, whatever. And then like, you know, when they, like the idea was like that the orcs would like, they'd get out and confront each other and be like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, and they would turn to the goblins and be like, you better support me or I'll fucking eat you for lunch, and you know, and then everyone would throw in their cards like with the side privately, with the side they wanted to win, and so, you know, and then like you suddenly the chief would be like, no, you cowards, you betrayed me, as the votes are counted up and he goes down, right? Seemed pretty simple, pretty intuitive, but in play, what happened was everyone went to their respective orky corners and we're just like, all right, wait, I think we can get more votes on him. And then they would go over and be like, okay, I challenge you to a duel right now. Okay, how many votes you got? You only have 1 vote, we have 2 votes, okay, you're dead. Okay, great, you know, and I basically accidentally made the Orc Continental Congress LARP. Right? It was like, it was terrible. It was awful. There were a couple of good rules in that I want to recycle, but you know, I was trying to evoke this like very, you know, this passionate, whimsical, you know, kind of like cruel behavior in players, and instead I turned them all into orc politicians. Or orc Tories are the worst.
So, but was the game, I'm curious, did it play well but was off theme? Like, you know what I mean? Like, was the game itself, the problem was that they were bad at being orcs, or that they were bad at having fun? I wasn't there, so I don't know.
I think it was so divergent between theme and execution that it couldn't find its balance on either one.
Gotcha.
Like, it was so far off. I've thought about retooling that as a Continental Congress LARP. Would anyone play a Continental Congress LARP?
I mean, that's a whole debate.
How many of you would buy it anyway?
Yeah.
Would buy it anyway because I made it. Yeah.
Oh, so that's
yeah.
fewer hands,
like
though.
the fewer hands. Yeah. Tommy's like, you just ruined my panel.
No, this is great.
But when you talk about the question that you're just trying to get me to do this shit, to do this terrible thing to somebody, right?
Yeah.
To me, that speaks also like when you talk about that critical eye, and that's the player escaping their critical eye for a second. I mean, their eye is on you,
Yes.
and not so much necessarily, or they're scouting the game for something to explain why they're doing what they're doing, and to kind of reconcile the relationship to it to some extent. Or like, no, I'm going to do this terrible thing, but I don't want it to be my fault, maybe.
Yeah.
But in that dynamic, I think speaks to the critical eye for gaming. Also relates to, if games are art, and I think that they are a medium, I think that's fine. I think they're an art form. But is that we don't often ask why decisions are made, because games, I think, have that ranking mechanism and some of that success history. We say, this game is broken because I can buy these 10 powers, then I will crush my enemies, and I will be too good. I'll be broken, right? This character is broken. But we don't ask, why is that thing in the book in the same way, right? So some of us do, and sometimes we do. But often we don't engage in games with that question of, why is it the way it is? And I think about this in video games all the time, where you see people give advice to video game publishers, which is do it the way this other video game does it.
Yeah.
Which is right, right. Which is like, first of all, as if the people who make Destiny have never seen Call of Duty, which is, of course they have. So why didn't they do it the way that other games are doing it? And the answer might be IP, or it might be technology or engine or whatever. But the answers also are often because I want to make a game too. Like, I want to make a game, not just dress a game.
Right.
And I think of that often as the difference between people making your games for you and people making their games for you. And that's part of the nature of a critical eye, is what is the maker of this game? Again, not necessarily trying to say, but trying to provoke or evoke or you know, draw a circle around, again, not in the sense of like, this is the point, everybody, but in the sense of when you leave this circle, you're kind of, you know, you've kind of voided the warranty, or sort of outside the city bounds. And that's not bad necessarily, but I can no longer protect you. It is no longer about play. Right. This, you know, like, I don't know what happens out there. We only play test it out to this radius or whatever.
Sure. And so, yeah, I'm saying that we don't know.
Right.
You probably don't know. Maybe you do. You're probably smarter than us. But play to know, and then come tell us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
We're really outsourcing this. That's what this panel is about, is crowdsourcing, figuring this out. So, I don't know, don't make adventures that are boring, that you already know the outcome or the message of. Like, if your players can't, like, fuck you as a DM by coming up with something totally different, that might be bad. Or
Tommy's an RPG designer. I don't know if you know. Secret Hitler's an RPG. Yeah.
Yeah, don't bring that in. Don't bring that into this, Luke. That's between you and me, old man. I think this is a good place to tie it up. I think it's interesting to think about, like, what games can do and how not to use them. Don't do a thing with a game that you could do better with a play, because they're different. Like, find a way to use what is special about games, that interaction, that social aspect. to do whatever it is you're trying to do. Or, I don't know, write a book. That's also a fun experience. If you're trying to tell a story that's one story, do that. Thank you guys for coming. Do you guys have any last words before we go out back and duel with pistols?
Play more games. Yeah.
Play all the games.
All right, thanks guys. Have a good PAX.
They remembered.